Here we go. If we're still alone while everyone else is going, how does this happen?
It's almost like when you are hosting, you can see literally people coming in from the lobby,
Yeah.
from the virtual lobby inside.
Yeah,
So.
I can see 5 attendees.
Nice.
I am going to start putting up your social links so that everybody feels that we are here. Hi, everybody. I know you can if you have your sound on. We're just going to give people a few minutes to come in. I'm going to put up some links so that you have them for the film. And then we'll let most of you get settled in, and then we'll get going if that's okay.
I have to say, if you ever want the most professionally put together, prepared Zoom Q&A, ask Walty to do it, because you're so good with the emails and everything, laying everything out. So thank you. And
oh, you're very kind. I'm sorry they're long. It's the old saying, if I had more time, I would have written less.
Less? No, it's perfect.
But I still haven't, you know what I haven't mastered, Warren, is the template, which I know we have very well-respected festival programmers in the audience with us tonight. And to those programmers, I say to you as a jury member and participant, thank you so much for these templates you do.
Templates are very crucial.
Wow, what an education. Guys, hi everybody. I see you weighing in. I'm just going to put up some links while we're waiting for Gary, who is just setting up.
Gary, the naturally reclusive co-writer, my best friend from Hamilton, his Zoom camera is not working, so he's trying to reboot his computer and furiously come back in. But we can all make fun of him when he comes back in, because he's kind of like,
should we go? You know, writers, we don't need any more shaming.
It's true.
We've got all the shaming in our heads at all.
It's not so much shaming, just making fun of them.
I'm so excited to see everybody. Look at this turnout, Warren. I don't know.
It's fantastic.
If you see it, but I am amazed. I see Texas. Hello, Olivia. I love that you could do this with us. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
My mom and dad just tuned in, which is
hi, Warren's mom and dad,
Mr. and Mrs. Sonoda, and just as a little trivia, my mom's maiden name was Yaguchi, so the Yaguchis are actually named after. Oh, Gary! Oh, we're gonna make fun of you now, Gary, being late. That's all.
Hey, everybody! Me and Gary are just seeing each other for the first time. Hey. Hello, friends! Congratulations on your first produced film.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's
I'm so glad you're here. So everything got worked out?
Apparently, we'll see.
Clearly, yeah, I can hear you and see you, and I think everybody else looks pretty happy. Let's see where we're at. We're just going to give these guys. It's early. We're through.
Yeah, we can spritz. Walty, if you got housekeeping you want to do, or you got your actual spritz.
As you can tell, people always ask me. People always ask me if that's my next show on the wall, and I'm sorry to disappoint you, screen cappers. But what's on the wall behind me are my community commitments to mentorships. So I've got BIPOC's Mentorship Monday friends, some of whom are joining us tonight. I've got, I'm a new board member on Women in Film and Television in Toronto.
Yes, you are.
So I got some stuff going on, some homework to do there. Hello to all my sisters and brothers joining from that organization. I know we've got people who are joining us from Working the Scene in Color in Toronto. I'm so thrilled to see you guys. And
some of our casts.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you introduce everybody, because I'm not sure you know everybody, and I'm not sure who's shy and wants to low profile. You're the director. You get to call them out when we.
Rhett already said hi. Rhett Morita plays Tosh in the movie, the boy's father.
And oh my God.
And the boys are actually on. Max and Theo Aoki are on. So the Yaguchis are on. And Ian just wants me to finish the story about the Yaguchi family. So
do it.
My mom's maiden name is Yaguchi. And when Gary and I were trying to figure out what to call Max and Theo's family, I'm like, well, let's call it Yaguchi. And I've actually used it in a previous script called Warriors of Terra for Peace Arts Entertainment. There's a guy in it named Yaguchi. So every once in a while, and my mom and dad are in the Zoom. I'm so impressed my dad could figure out how to use Zoom. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for tuning in. But yeah, there's a little shout out to my mom's family. In the movie.
That's amazing, and it's what an honor to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. My name's Karen, but my friends call me Walty. It's so nice to meet the parents of Warren Sonoda, who I've known for years and admired. It's such an honor. This is our first time we ever get to talk shop together.
Outside of Linktree.
Outside of the old social nights in the pub, which we're kind of like reluctant to do at the moment for obvious safety reasons here in Toronto. Yeah. I'm in Toronto. Where are you, Gary? I don't think people
I'm in Hamilton.
You're in Hamilton tonight.
Yeah.
Right on. Hello, Hamilton.
The scene where it all happens and things I do.
Right on. Yeah. You guys...
Literally, we're the basement where.
Yeah, exactly. This room we're in is the very first where we did the audition scene to see whether or not Max and Theo could actually act.
That's
So
incredible.
they did it right behind me. They attacked one another on this couch.
And they can actually act, I assure you. Yeah. I was spellbound, guys.
Well, we didn't know when we were putting together the movie if they could or not. So we actually asked them to. We wrote an audition scene, right?
Yeah, we wrote like I don't know, it was about 4 minutes or something. But it was pretty heavy in terms of what they had to do. Like they had to be really emotional and they had to be physical with one another as well, which was obviously quite challenging. But
yeah, because they're not brothers that. So Max and Theo are actual real brothers from Hamilton that play the cello, and they're amazing. But they're not the type of brothers that beat each other up. So we wanted to see if they could actually go there in their characters. I'm actually on my phone looking for the actual audition piece, so you can spritz a little bit there.
Oh, yeah, we filmed it, didn't we?
Yeah, I have it here on my phone somewhere. But
I'm just letting everybody know about the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen.
So you'll notice that this basement apartment is actually the basement that Gary's in right now.
You're caught. Is that it? Move. No. Get out of my way. Did you get caught? No. Fucking move, man. You let me down. I let you down? Welcome to the club. What are you talking about? Without me, you don't make money. You don't play music. You don't do shit. We don't play music anymore. Let's get on Broy in this street. You think you know everything.
And because Max and Theo are on the Zoom right now, I'm sure they love me showing that. But
I don't want to be low profile, so this is on you if you're busting out the family.
Well, it was just interesting as writers to actually write. It was a mock scene. It was a sort of an amalgam of a bunch of different moments in the movie, just to see if the boys could do it, because we had no idea if I don't even think they knew if they could act until they tried it, because they had never acted, even in high school.
Gentlemen, you can totally act. I'm promising you. I can't wait to see the next thing you do and the next performances you're giving. So with that said, I think I'm going to start getting us underway a little more formally and let people know who are these weirdos talking. And that way we can observe our hour respectfully, because I know you guys have been working really hard.
It's going to be more than an hour, Walty. Come on.
All right.
It always is.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
You get to call it as discussed. So bear with me, everybody who's watching us. I'm going to start the formal part of our program, which is very limited and will be over shortly, I assure you. But because we have so many new friends and old friends and titans of the writing industries and all kinds of interested industry people, I just want to make sure that everybody knows what's up and how this came about, because it is a first for me too. So good evening. And welcome to InkCanada's very first live Zoom webinar format. My name is Karen Walton. My friends call me Walty, and you should too. I'm a professional screen and television writer producer and a new board member at Women in Film and Television Toronto, as I just mentioned. I also happen to be the founder and administrator of a little group called InkCanada. Now, Ink is a public online community of professional screenwriters of all stripes. They're industry peers, students of the craft, and friends of Canadian creators everywhere. We talk shop, share information and advice, and support storytellers of all experiences in a user-driven, casual, and very cordial vibe. 24/7, no matter where you live, no matter your career experience, it is free. Ink runs on caring community spirit and a lot of caffeine and overt and behind the scenes kindnesses. The group turned 13 years old on Facebook this year, and as of tonight, we are 7,900 unique voices strong. Can you believe
100 more. Where's the other 100? We can do it.
Come on, let's do it. You can find us on Facebook. I put a link in chat, so if you scroll up and are curious at the end of this, you are more than welcome to join us. So tonight, I want to start by thanking our co-host behind the scenes, who is sitting at home in the audience with you. She's standing by to make sure we get everybody's questions. Her name is Nicole Roux, and she is the volunteer moderator of InkCanada's official film club, a private group for our members only, where she single-handedly organizes, well, before COVID, runs to the movies together here in Toronto, and since then has been puzzling it out with me on how to get writers and friends to do watch parties and see movies together as writers. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Nicole. We really appreciate you. And I'd like to thank everybody at Raven Banner Releasing, who made it possible for InkCanada members, already know this, to put screener links in the hands of all kinds of people who might not be able to see the film right now otherwise, including some of my mentorees from the BIPOC Film and TV Mentorship Mondays, and our fabulous friends at Working the Scene in Color. Now, tonight, it is my sincere pleasure, as you can already tell, to welcome one of our MVPs at InkCanada and in the wider Canadian creative communities, writer-director Warren Sonoda and longtime co-writer Gary Nolan, the scribes behind the newly released Canadian film Things I Do for Money. Now, we're going to talk about their experience as a screenwriting team and take your questions for what is definitely going to be an excellent and very enlightening conversation about the arts and crafts of great collaborations. I know some of you have been talking about this on the group lately, so this happens to be complete fluke, super timely for our members. Now, their professional bios were included in your Zoom invitations.
Please don't read them, Walty.
Yeah.
Please
I'm not reading them because
Okay, good.
I have loads
We'll go
of
there.
questions that those inspired. But first, I want to give you two an opportunity to introduce each other, because in my experience, the best way to get to know a writer is to talk to another writer who works with them. So Warren, would you please do the honors and let us know what you think we should know about your co-writing partner, Gary?
I just want to say, Bill Dunphy just said 77,900 members. That's basically one member for every CBC Relief Fund entry. So yeah, we could almost do the 100.
True, it's true.
If
only
Gary-
I could produce everyone, we'd be fine. But
if
yeah.
Gary was on Facebook, he could be the 7,901st member, but he rarely is.
Okay.
So Gary Nolan, what can I say? He's probably saved my creative life and my life in general many times over by being my best friend. We met each other kind of as at the Keg in Hamilton, really. That's how we kind of met each other. I was a salad boy. Gary was a waiter. There is 10 years difference in age. So like when I was like 16, you must have been 26, right? Working at the Keg. And then I actually transferred from Sherwood Secondary School to Hill Park, where Gary was teaching. And he, so I transferred my senior year, grade 12. And Gary was very gracious and was our teacher advisor for our student Sears Festival play called One Tiger to a Hill. Walty, did you ever do Sears Festival in high school? Did you ever put on a play?
I was in plays all the time. I went to high school in Alberta like you. I had to transfer into another world.
Right.
So we had plays all the time, and then we had a regional competition. Is it like that?
Yeah, so Sears Canada, the store, would put on this amazing theater competition. And most schools put on sort of, fun little 1 hour student. We lost the production we put on lost to David Daler's Westdale production of Reduce, Recycle, Reuse. And we put on the hard-hitting Canadian drama, One Tiger to a Hill, which was a prison drama, which was like...
Suddenly, this movie is making a lot of more sense to me.
So Gary was our student or teacher advisor on it, and we promised we would edit the script, the play, because it was
full of profanity.
Yeah, it was an adult prison drama, and we were grade 12 students putting it on, and we put it on for the school as a sort of dress rehearsal for
like an afternoon matinee.
Yeah, at the school at Hill Park. And one kid in the cast started to go back to the original script. I don't know if he was just nervous or whatever. That's what he prepared. He started swearing. And then everybody else on stage started swearing.
And I'm sitting in the audience beside the vice principal.
And I'm in the sound, because I was directing and stage managing and doing the lighting cues in this little booth at the back. And Mr. Nolan comes up to me with the script of One Tiger to a Hill, slams it down on my lighting board, and says, "This is not what we discussed." And I don't know what he did, but he did not get me, or Jason Jones was also in it. Jason Jones, a good friend of mine. He went on to do The Daily Show. He married Samantha Bee. He has the show The Detour. My other best friend, Kevin Spencer, who was in a band called Rhymes with Orange back in the 90s. He was also in the touring company of Rent. He starred in Rent. So we were the drama community there. And then this one performance could have ended my career, my secondary school career. But Gary, I don't know, you saved my butt from the vice principal, and we became fast friends. And since then, we started kind of writing. Like, I went to Ryerson Film School for film, but Gary would come in and just kind of hang out, and we would start writing. And we've written dozens of scripts since Ryerson, really. But Things I Do for Money is the very first script to get produced. So the thing you need to know about Gary is he will have your back even if you swear profusely on stage over and over and over and over again.
Well, thank you.
That's the type of guy he is.
That is what I call a team intro.
And
Gary?
it leaves little left for me to say. I mean, I can, again, Warren's sort of given us all the background in terms of how we met and such. And I remember Warren quite clearly from when I first met him. I mean, yeah, everyone talks all the time. It's Warren Sonoda. Well, you know Warren Sonoda? And yeah, my kids call him Uncle Warren. You know, it's he's been there when my children were born. He's lived in my house more times. Than
slept on that couch over and over again.
Right here,
yeah,
regularly. Writing with him has been a pleasure and a frustration, time and again,
and a pain.
And it's and the way in which it began was, the way he left a good chunk out of the way our relationship sort of evolved, which was he was making music videos, and when he was in Ryerson, he wanted to make a music video for something hen or chicken. I can't remember the band.
Fire Rooster.
Fire Rooster, thank you. Yeah. Anyway, and he needed an older person. Like, he couldn't use all his peers. So I was the older person he needed to be in his video. So
you're the 29-year-old.
Yeah, I was the old guy at 29. So
of course you were. Yes.
So he brought me in, and that was sort of the beginning of a friendship that extended outside of either the keg or teaching, and it just flourished from there. I mean, we became friends. We got along. We saw things the same way. And then when he was working at Black Walk, he was looking for ideas to make a movie, because he really wanted to make a movie. And we sat around talking about it. And I said, well, I pitched this idea to him. And, I just threw it out there. Like, I honestly, and this happens frequently when we're writing. I'll say something and he'll go, "That's great." And I'll say, "It is?" really? I didn't think so. I mean, okay, well, fine. And then, he says, let's develop it or work on it. And we had this idea for a story a long, long time ago, and we turned it into a script.
Was this Chris Crater?
Yeah, remember?
Yeah.
What happens if a kid gets his bicycle stolen 3 days before his birthday, and it's a birthday present, and he takes his own bike and loses it? That was like kind of the idea. And then he has to get it back. And he's just like, I don't know.
From the bullies that stole it from him.
Yeah.
Because he took it from the garage that his mom and dad was hiding the bike in. Yeah. And he has to get it back before his birthday. And I thought that was just a brilliant idea.
And it was
I love that.
There's like and the kid's a bit of a weirdo kid, like a bit of an Encyclopedia Brown crossed with, I don't know, like a Mission Impossible kind of character, and has all these gadgets. Like he has a gun that shoots, you put ketchup packets in it and he squeezes it and it shoots pressurized ketchup at people. Like that kind of goofy stuff. It's just kid stuff, right? But
it's awesome.
Like we wrote this story and it was really well received from everyone who read it as a story. Like,
and it got optioned by Michael Harlett at Blackwalk.
Yeah. So, and it was like, this is like the very first thing we'd ever done. And so from then, like, which was like 97, I think, or 96, somewhere around then.
Somewhere, yeah.
And it was like, oh, well, wow, we can do this. And so from that point, we just started working together again and again and again, and nothing ever happened until now.
Yeah, for like 2020 some odd.
We're gonna get to that. We'll get to that part, because the gap where you're like, okay, so it's finally happening, is what so many writers, I think student writers don't really understand, and experienced writers know very well, but find it hard to communicate to those who are waiting for anything to ever happen, with the families in their ear going, you got to give it up and make a living. You can't be like sitting in a room talking to yourself all your adult life. It's not a real thing. Like I certainly had that. And that was before I even became a writer, so I can't even imagine. But moving to Toronto to be a screenwriter concerned my poor late father to no end.
Right.
And I said, but Dad, I'm a bartender. That's why I'm so delighted to you were a salad boy. Well, and I'm very tempted to call you salad boy, just as my friend.
For sure. A salad boy will make t-shirts. But the one interesting thing was Gary and I, Bill just asked, through the standard writing cycle.
I see this one. Yeah,
and this it kind of segues into what I'm about to say.
Okay, let's read it. So I'm not sure if everybody's on the Q&A button, so I'm just going to read it real quick.
Sure.
So Bill, our friend Bill Dunphy, so great to see you here, Bill. Since I'm sure both of you, I'm sure both of you got through the standard writing cycle of excitement, despair, drudgery, despair.
Double despair.
You can tell it's a writer's call, because I'm like, I would add a few more despairs. And joy, relief. When you tackle a new project, can you talk about how the partnership deals with one of you being out of sync with the other? That's a good question.
It's a great question. And the one thing in this timeline that Gary kind of described of over 20 years is we were always out of sync, because I think both of us we could understand, but we really couldn't understand each other's lives the way they were put together, in that I was a film student in Ryerson, staying up until 5 a.m. doing stuff. And I didn't know why Gary couldn't just drop everything when he had kids and he has to teach. And then at the same time, Gary was like, when are you going to get responsible and get your shit together? So the out of syncness, I think, has always been part of the duality of our timelines, because a little bit because of age, but because of
just different lifestyles. Like I have a very, my life as a teacher is obviously very stable. I mean, I know exactly what I'm doing at 9 o'clock, and at 10:05 the bell goes, and then it starts again at 10:15. So, and it's been that way forever. Not to say it's what I inherently, it's not my nature. My nature is to stay up till 3 a.m. and do stuff outside of that, which makes it really hard to be a teacher sometimes. But having said that, to address the question that Bill was asking in more particular terms, when Warren and I get together, because we are living very different lives, and we still do this to the day, we usually get together, and we're together before we start writing. We're usually together for 8 to 10 hours, So
Just talking, yeah.
like if you think, and not necessarily about the story per se, although sometimes we will, until we're into the project. Once we are into it, then it's different. But at the very beginning, if we have the genesis of an idea, or we're thinking about something else to do, something next, we'll get together and like we'll go, go for coffee maybe, or if it's dinner time, we'll go for dinner, or if it's Warren, he probably wants to go for dessert a couple times. And then he'll fall asleep for a little while, and I'll be thinking.
I love my naps. I nap all the time like Gary. I will fall asleep on Gary. I will fall asleep for 3 hours on Gary. He's just kind of sitting there, just waiting for me to wake up.
But the point being that we've established, we know each other well enough that we know we don't expect to get down to it right away. Like we really don't. And everyone knows, Jen, Warren's wife, knows, and Morella, my wife, knows, oh, they're writing. And what that really means is for the first 6 hours, they're hanging out, going to the keg, having dinner, going to a bar, having a couple of drinks, whatever. It's part of the process, at least for me, because I find that I sometimes might need to just get my personal shit out of the way and tell him whatever, because he's one of my closest friends, and vice versa. But also it's just sort of this settling in until we find this for want of a better word, so we're basically on the same plane. Because when we meet one another, he might have just come off shooting a show, and I've just marked exams, and they're very different mindsets to be bringing together. So that's how it sort of begins, the very beginning.
Yeah, it always starts from an out of sync place, Bill, and it's that sort of constant working at getting into sync. Now, like Gary said, for something like Things to Do for Money, when we finally get past the having to talk for 8 hours or 4 hours or whatever, I can come into Hamilton. Usually it's either I come into Hamilton. This is pre-COVID, obviously. I could come into Hamilton. Oh, here's Jen right now. I'm going to take my headphones off so Jen can hear this conversation, because we're talking for a little bit.
Did you get a haircut, Warren? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I had
interrupt.
Hi, Jen. How's it going? Introduce yourself to our gang.
Hi, Gary.
Okay. So, I would go into Hamilton probably for 2 days or 3 days whenever I had time off, or on the weekend, Gary might come to Toronto because sometimes it's good for him to get away from his family too, because it's hard. He has 27 kids and a house that always needs fixing. So we'll get a chunk done, and then suddenly halfway through that, someone will come in, and I sleep and have naps because I will lose him for 2 hours because he has to fix something. So, but when
we make dinner, or
when
drive kids to Taekwondo or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's been nights where we could write 20 pages in one night because we just we call it the RPL, and we'll get into it in a bit. Our rough plot lines are so specific that we can just kind of get into it and start writing right away.
I have 2 questions waiting, but I'm going to jump in with one that was sent. Somebody was so keen to ask this, they sent it in advance, if I may.
Yes.
Because it is a general craft question before we get into the nitty-gritty of this particular screenplay. And the question is for both of you, and it's from Ed. And Ed would like to know, when there are 2 writers, how is something as intensely personal as intent established? Now, I only thought of this today, Ed, so I apologize. I know you're listening. Whether you meant how the writer's intentions get equaled out, or if you mean the character's intentions. Because, look, I work.
You could answer both.
Yeah, exactly. I work in TV where writers' intentions are half your day. Right. And the 4-hour conversations included. And then the character intentions are the stuff that we all get on one page for. So what's your answer to that?
Gary, do you want to start it off and I'll finish it?
Sure. In terms of, Warren again alluded to this thing that we refer to as the RPL. And predominantly that's just the story, the thing that drives the plot forward kind of thing. But okay. in doing that, we've obviously discussed what the characters are and who they are and such. And I think frequently we actually spend a lot of time discussing backstory of the characters, the stuff that you never see. Like we talk about what might have been going on in this person's life or things of that nature.
Yeah, so, for instance, in Things to Do for Money, like what happened to the Yaguchis something happened in Vancouver. What is
Right.
that we kind of allude to, but for us, it's a good 2 or 3 hour conversation, just either to distract us, but
Yeah.
also to get us into that intent sort of
Yeah,
sphere.
so to answer the question with respect to the character's intent, I find that it's a neither one of us, I think, has a very it's a collaborative thing, like in terms of the way the characters are behaving. Or sometimes, like I might write something, and Warren would say, "Well, that wouldn't happen," or "Why would that? Why is he doing that?" And then I try and break down. Well, I think he's feeling this way, blah blah blah, and vice versa. Like Warren would do something, I say, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would she do that? That's stupid." Or like, and would literally talk that way. I mean, much more blunt than that, to be
Yeah.
honest. But the point being that,
Yeah.
and then he would justify it, and I'd say, "Oh, I didn't think of that." Or I'd say, well, yeah, that's cool. That's a nice tangent, but I think it would actually happen for this reason. So she wouldn't say that way, or she wouldn't behave that way, but rather maybe this way. And when we get to talking about things to do for money, we can talk about specific scenes where those kinds of questions or discussions
Choices,
happen with what we did in the story. Specifically with the motivation between the characters doing things that they did and why they did or did not do something in that way. In terms of intent, like you want to address the intent of the screenwriter, Warren?
Yeah, I will, because I think it's an important question in the dynamic of you and me, Gary, because my intent is different than your intent. Your intent, listen, the reason why I write with Gary is it keeps me honest, because it's very easy for me to kind of just in the quickness that I try to get through certain things, because my time's limited, Gary's time's limited. We have to schedule when he's not teaching, when I'm not shooting. So we have a very small window, maybe a weekend, to break a story or to break an act or whatever. Gary doesn't care about the things I care about. And I think that's important when you're finding a partner, a writing partner, is if you both care about the same thing, you're going to get sort of an unrealized potential of a story. But because Gary does not give a shit about my shooting schedule or whatever, he cares about the story. He asks the questions that I wouldn't normally ask. And that's important to find a partner that does that. Conversely, if I don't give us deadlines, we would write nothing. Like we would just probably talk about whatever it is that we're going through in our personal lives, or what we're going through Gary's house or whatever. And I think the writer's intent for both of us are just completely different. Now with Things I Do for Money, my intent was very clear. After 20 some odd years of writing, and I had done 10 features, I really felt bad. Like we would have these conversations. I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know what it is, but I've not been able to get my filmmaking shit together enough to produce one of our scripts. And we've written some pretty damn good scripts. And so in the fall of 2017, I just said to him, next year, we're going to make a movie. And it just started like that. We didn't have we had Things That I Do for Money as a movie kind of idea that we had in 2006, but I just said, let's make a movie next year. And that was my intent. But Gary's intent would have been, and Gary, tell me if I'm right or wrong, let's do something good. Let's write something. You're not gonna put the time in unless it's worth your while. And mine is just like, let's just do it. Like, who cares? And I think through working with Gary, he's gotten me to care more about, because I do care about the process, care more about the actual.
Warren.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, my computer is just doing this weird thing. It's humming like crazy. Anyhow, when Warren says that I don't give a shit about certain things, it's not that I don't. It's just I'm not a director. I try and write the thing that would be the thing I want to see. And to be perfectly honest, I'm positive he's not watching, so I can say it. Frequently, I said this to Warren too, I try and write things that I think my dad would like to watch, which is really hard. My dad's like a grumpy older guy who's discerning and has read more books than I will probably ever read. So he's a very literate fellow, but and he likes really good stories. And so I would like to write things that I think he would like, but it's really hard to do because I don't think he would like a lot of stuff. So, and things that I personally would also like. And so when we're working together, my intent is to try and make it authentic. Warren's intent is to make something cinematic. And I don't see them necessarily as polar opposites.
No.
But they're not the same.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so I think it's very complimentary in terms of the way we work together. And you know, I didn't know that I kept Warren true, but you know, good.
It sounds like a perfect set of elements in a good screenwriting combination. And my question, just to follow up those excellent sort of analyses, is this. So if you were talking to a writer who was thinking about partnering up with someone because they just can't get it done on their own and and you had a choice, like they actually could go out in the world and get any version of this they wanted, would it be another dedicated writer? Would it be a producer who's done 1,000, all your favorite movies, guiding them through the process? Would it be a director who also actually writes and have that marriage between the, yeah, but I gotta shoot it and I want it to look amazing,
right?
Because the cinema, certainly for film, is about turning off the sound and you can understand the story, right? And then TV's the opposite. It's radio with awesome pictures sometimes, right? So what combo would you recommend to a writer who is like, I have a crazy life too and I can't get it done and I need a buddy, what do I do?
And you're just, in this writer, this hypothetical writer just writes. They don't
just writes.
Direct. Okay.
No ambition to get behind the camera, no ambition to get on top of making the whole thing happen.
I mean, you know, my perspective is just so biased because I am who I am. But I write with Gary because unless I did, I would not have written as many scripts as I've written, and I wouldn't have gotten good at it. Now, outside of our relationship, writing original screenplays, I've rewritten scripts. I've rewritten a movie called Unrivaled that I ended up directing, and kind of did the rewrite on The Masked Saint and Warriors of Terra and what was the other one? Heartstopper, which were Peace Arts horror movies. But I could have only done them because I had worked so hard with Carrie working on these other scripts. But there's something to be said about working with someone that pragmatically can get that thing done and made. Because I do have many writer friends that have scripts that they would love to get made, but they might not know the path or the journey to take that project on to actualize it. And Things I Do for Money very much is, for me, the writing intent for me was to actualize a screenplay that Gary and I wrote. And it started as, I didn't really care what it was. And we've kind of said this in interviews before. It's like, we tried writing the typical low budget Canadian indie film, 4 or 5 people, 1 location, basically a horror film in a farmhouse over winter because you can get crew, right? Like that's kind of, and we did. We kind of spent.
Well, I think we have a couple of those. I think we have at least one of those written.
Yeah.
But they were not
ready to go.
Yeah, like they were just never. They just didn't have the thing that I've been bugging Warren about for a while, to do something that his heart is in, like really, really a part of him. And the way Things I Do for Money happened, it just so happened that this was an opportunity where Warren could put his heart into it, not just because we were making it and it was going to be actualized, but just we'll probably get to that.
Well, I'll get to it right now, Karen. If you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and
do it, and then I see our questions waiting, and we'll jump to those questions, and we'll bend them around the narrative.
If you can just
often thing.
You just have to allow me. You just have to.
I'm not allowing you.
You want me?
Reclaim your time. How do I do it?
Answer. I pulled up the Q&A questions and I can see them. Do you want me to answer one of them while Warren's doing this?
That's a good idea, because I think I have to just squeeze you in as a co-host. Isn't that the deal, Warren?
Yes, or you can just go down to share screen, press it, and say allow others to share screen, either in the 3 dots at the bottom or on share screen. Yeah. And those of you watching are getting a free Zoom tutorial.
Yeah, enjoy me figuring out the buttons that I don't usually have to know. These are the 3 buttons at the bottom are going to like send us live streaming to God knows where I was on the internet last time.
Then press share screen.
Yeah, but it's just my screen I'm seeing.
Okay, so I'm not.
It doesn't say allow others.
Maybe under advanced.
If you go to the participants list and you see my name, go over it and it might say allow to share screen.
No, we almost had it. You talk, Gary, and we'll get this.
Well, Michael's question we're going to answer in
later.
This document that I'm about to share.
Okay. Yeah. So do you want me to go to Rhett's question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rhett's question again, doing what Karen did.
Actually, I'm gonna share the RPL, so we'll
exactly. So it'll address that as well to some extent. Okay, I'll answer Jen's question then.
Yeah.
The question she asks is, do you always write together in the same session, or do you sometimes write solo and then come together to edit, discuss what each of you has produced? We do both. At the very beginning, we're in the same room, pretty much always. The RPL we always work on together, and then once we actually get down to the very first scene of the film, we're almost always together. But then after we've done that, we each start writing parts independent of the other person, and then sort of throw it past the other person and say, hey, what do you think? Is this what we're looking for? Me in particular, because Warren is, he praises me, but the reality is he's the seasoned guy and the one that I defer to most of the time. So I'll write something and say, is this okay? And generally it's not. So I have to change it somehow or make it. Usually it's just a tweaking, just like he amps the language a little bit, those kinds of things. But in terms of, we've discussed things before we get to the writing stage. We've discussed things so well that we know the characters. Both of us each know what the characters are. So it doesn't really matter who we're writing, which character we're writing for. Each of us knows both characters the same way. So we can flip. Sometimes, there's scenes in Things I Do for Money. Warren said, you got a better handle on the way the emotions in this scene,
right? Because
I have children. I have 2 boys, and it just turns out by fluke, my sons actually know Max and Theo from high school. But the natures of my sons is actually very, very similar to the nature of Theo and Max. My older son is cavalier, happy-go-lucky, and my younger son is this intense, brooding young guy who's very driven, but very funny as well. Like Theo's a really funny guy, but anyway,
dry funny, yeah.
Yeah, but I could rely on those relationships because I witnessed my kids growing up, and so. Can I refer to a scene specifically in the film? One of the things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, a lot of people have seen the film on that.
Yeah, so a lot of them have seen it, and if they haven't seen it,
spoiler alert! If it comes out,
I'll try and take care of you.
Yeah.
Like when we were actually coming up with the way in which the guys interact with one another to establish the relationships, and Theo walks in or Eli walks in and whacks Nick in the balls. We talked about that in terms of how would my sons wake up the other one? How would Ferris wake up Callum, his older brother?
And it's actually written a different way than what we shot.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And then in the same vein, when
it was written where Eli would go in and just sat on Max.
Yeah, sat on it, but it wasn't working on set, and so,
On the day, yeah.
so Warren got.
So I basically told Theo, go next take. He takes a little sandwich into his brother who's like passed out on his bed. Go in and whack him as hard as you can in the nuts. And I felt comfortable giving that direction because they're brothers, and this is the relationship they have. And it made the film, and Max's reaction is amazing in it.
It's a legit reaction. That's not acting. Like he really got sacked.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that's very similar to that, and again happened on the day of, is when they're walking down by the factories holding the cello cases, and they walk by, and I said, we're watching it, and we watched it, they did a scene, and I leaned over to Warren and said, it'd be really funny if Eli whacked him in the ass with
to get back at him for
getting sacked earlier.
Nick. It was
Nick. Nick whacks him.
Yeah.
And so he does. And those cello cases are hard. They're very solid, and he just whacked them right in the ass, and it was very funny. And again, Eli or Theo wasn't expecting it, and it was these natural things.
And we weren't doing it just to put in ball tap humor, which I'm famous for. It was really to signal to the audience watching the movie, you're allowed to laugh at these two brothers. You're allowed to enjoy the relationship. This is not the crime part of the movie yet, and to establish their rapport. But what I'll do right now to answer the first question that was up in terms of how many drafts did we write, I'll take you on a little timeline. I prepared this, Walty, for you because in the preamble back and forth, I was trying to figure out what's the actual, because Gary and I have done some interviews about how long this took. The actual writing of it was very truncated and quick comparatively to a lot of the screenwriters that are on the Zoom, where you might work on this movie for years. So it's interesting. The very first email I got from Theo and Max was February 17th, 2016. And they said, and I had known about them because Gary told me about them through knowing, he knew their mom, Alicia, who was also a teacher, and he had seen these two young cello players play the cello. And so I knew who they were through that. And I said, Gary, give them my email, tell them I think they're great. And they wrote me on February 17th, 2016, Dear Mr. Sonoda, they're so polite. The boys are very polite. Gary Nolan passed your contact information on to us. We have heard many great things about you. Perhaps we could meet at some point. Sincerely, Maximilian and Theodore Aoki. This was the start of something very special. So they wrote this in 2016. And then I wrote back 27 minutes later saying, you guys are great, it's awesome. We should really think about doing something. At that point, I was thinking of doing a music video or something. And then I basically ghosted them for 2 years. I didn't respond. They kept emailing me, but I got busy. I think I was just starting. I was in the middle of either Trailer Park or Cyrus 22 Minutes or whatever, but I just started getting busy. So the timeline of things I do for money, the very first incarnation of this was in 2006, where Gary and I wrote a rough plot line of an idea called Things I Do for Money, which was very much an anthology ensemble crime film. And we applied to telefilm to it with Darius Productions, Nicholas Tadrak, and Leah over at Darius. We did not get the telefilm grant, happens. So writers out there, I hear your pain. So then it just kind of laid low. It just existed as this outline that we had. So in 2016, the boys emailed me. I ghosted them for 2 years. And then in 2017, I was doing 22 Minutes in Halifax, and Gary flew out for 4 days while I was finishing it up. And between shooting the sketch and everything, I had a lot of time off, and we basically sat down to write a movie. And this was the time where we were kind of going through the, one location farmhouse horror film idea. And I think I was the one that kept saying, what about those two kids? And prodding you about Max and Theo until we actually what if we just wrote something about these two cello playing brothers? And I think I think we committed while you were in Halifax to do that, right, Gare?
Yeah, we decided that to try and come up with a concept where Max and Theo would be central, and
use the cello that they
and you know, the cello being part of it. Like my intent in bringing Max and Theo to your attention was I just felt that their talent deserved a forum that I felt that Warren could give them.
Yeah.
And then when we were in Halifax and we talked about it, we thought, well, the things they do for money thing might work if we can somehow put Max and Theo in. How would that play out? Like if they were
totally different story. I mean, this is the thing about writing is like you're going to write something in 2006 and it might be a line of dialogue or a character or a title. And that's the thing, you know, I'm so bad at math. 11 years later, you'll go, things to do for money. What if they did something with money? What if they stole money? What if they stole a bag of money? What if they had to do an audition while they stole this money and all this stuff happened? So we started playing the what if game. And between October 2017 and January 2018, we basically broke the entire story for Things I Do for Money. And I can show that in a second. But at this time, in January, I reached out to Max and Theo, first to apologize for ghosting them for 2 years, but also to meet them, because as Gary and I got really so far into writing this treatment, and we had never talked to Max and Theo to see if A, they were interested in doing this, and B, if they could act.
And at the time, Theo was still, like, when we were doing this, Theo was still in high school. And what we were conceiving, we weren't sure that his parents would be okay with. Like, we really didn't know. Like, we had no idea at all.
Yeah, because it's is violent, and there's, you know, all this stuff happening. So we met on January 22nd, I think, because on January 23rd, I got an email from them saying, we are in.
Do it. Yeah.
And that was their official, we want to do it. We met with them and their mom at a Starbucks in Hamilton, gave them the elevator pitch of Things I Do for Money, what we had at the time. And basically, we're asking two young men to give their summer up. And remember, they're also McMaster engineering students. Like, they're like very, very smart. Like, Theo was the valedictorian during the shooting of this. Like, they're
valedictorian a few years prior.
Yeah. So on February 4th, we wrote a sample scene for Max and Theo to audition with. That's the little scene that I showed earlier. They aced it, and we proceeded to finish breaking the story. The very first RPL, we call it rough plot line, our RPL, is completed. And you were talking about templates earlier, Karen. We use a very specific template that's an amalgamation of, Save the Cat and Story by McKee. And there's a couple other things that I kind of stole this template from, and I'll show it in a second. But then, March 26, 2018, the first draft, a 90-page first draft of Things I Do for Money was written. So basically, it took us from that first RPL to going to a full 90-page draft less than a month. We did it because the RPL is very...
It was about 5 weeks.
Yeah. And then timeline-wise, basically from October 2017 to March 26, that's when we had our first draft from first idea, basically. And then Gary went to Paris for a bit. I had to wait for him to come back. We started on the new draft of Things to Do for Money while Max and Theo, we begged them to keep their summer open while we were writing. At the same time, I was directing TV, so it was always busy for all of us. We did our first full rehearsal in May with Max and Theo, and we had a second draft of the script by May. So first draft was March, April. So 2 months later, we had a second draft, which isn't bad considering Gary was teaching and I was directing 2 episodes of a TV show for Family Channel. And then finally, we had basically our white draft of Things to Do for Money on June 5th. And that's when Abby Fettergreen, my wife Jen Pogue, Emily Andrews, and Laura Norden from Film Coop. So Film Coop and Fettergreen Productions we basically sold them the idea during this time. So as we were writing, I was starting to put together the physical and creative assets to actually execute the script. On June 6th, we got a lovely message from the Northern Pikes that they did like the idea of using their title for our movie, and also because they have a hit song called "Things I Do for Money," and I had directed a music video for Jay Semko from the Northern Pikes in the 90s.
And I was actually in that video.
He was my older friend that was in the video. And then we went to a third draft on June 23rd. Theodore becomes the valedictorian on June 28th. Officially, we committed on June 29th. Now, this is important because we had raised zero money. I've had meetings with Avi Federgreen up to this point. He's wanted to make movies with me, and he said he'd love the script. Let's do it. But we had zero financing at that moment on June 29th. But we did have a third draft of the script. We had our stars. We had the title track, Things to Do for Money, from the Northern Pikes. So we were like, okay, let's do it. We sent our casting notices out at the beginning of July. We launched our Indiegogo campaign on July 16th. Do not run your Indiegogo campaign at the same time you're making your movie. They're two completely different things, and I wish I didn't have to do it, and it almost killed me. But we launched it on July 16th while we were casting, while we were location scouting. Playback wrote their first article on Things to Do for Money on July 20th. And then we were like, oh shit, we really have to make this movie now because it's in the trades. We recorded the first music with Max and Theo's, they call themselves Versacello. Check them out on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram, Versacello. They're amazing. But it was the first time we got them into a recording studio called The Tell with Byron Kent Wong to record some of the tracks for the Indiegogo campaign. We finally locked our production white draft on July 25th. So all throughout this, we're rewriting, right? Gary and I are, like he was saying, we were writing remotely and then we put things together. We had a pink draft ready for the 31st. We did our first tech scout in Hamilton on August 2nd. The first table read of the full cast. So all throughout this, I'm casting. On August 6th, we do a table read at the Hamilton Canadian Japanese Cultural Center, who gave us everything. They gave us their space to rehearse, to do the table read, to do production office work, to do casting. We shot all the scenes in the summer school that's in it is the Japanese Cultural Center in Hamilton, which is amazing. It looks like a real school. On August 8th, we had raised $29,999, and we had a pink shooting draft. So we had a locked pink shooting draft. We went to camera on the August 11th. We closed the Indiegogo on August 16th, and we raised $40,994. So between launching Indiegogo on July 16th to August 16th, in 1 month, we raised $40,000. Also, conversely, Avi Federgreen, Emily Andrews, Jen Pogue, Laura Norden, and I raised basically $120,000. So $80,000 of private equity, plus the bridge financing for the tax credits, because the tax credit calculation is part of that. But I basically had a shooting budget of $120,000, which I actually came in under. We shot the entire movie for about $100,000 cash money, which was great because we needed that $20,000 plus more. I think the final budget came to be about $160,000 after post and delivery, but it was all fucking worth it. And so this is a very long-winded answer to the question of how many drafts we went through. I don't know. I mean, we at least half a dozen.
And we would also not just formal drafts, but we would be rewriting scenes, literally on set sometimes.
Yeah.
Like changing things because they weren't going to work, or things would happen and we couldn't do it, or like a variety of things happened of that nature.
And you know, that's the other thing about having a director-writer and a writer-writer, a executive producer-writer, is I'm so focused on the shooting once we're on set that all I'm worrying about is what I'm putting in front of camera and the performances, right?
Right.
We had a 13-day main unit schedule and 2 pickup days. So this this 100-page script or whatever it was, we had to shoot in 13 days plus all the establishers and some driving shots in 2 days. And I would, it's much like a showrunner on set, I would rely on Gary to answer some of the questions, or a supervising writer on a television set, to talk with the cast about stuff that like was script oriented, because I couldn't do it. And that is another nice bonus of having a relationship like this, because I could worry about one thing, he could worry about the other. So I'm sorry that took so long, but
that was fantastic. Are you kidding? I think everybody's like blown away.
Well, it does answer the question of like, can you actually come up with the idea, write a script, finance it, cast it, location scout it, crew it, shoot it within a calendar year? And the answer is yes, you could probably do it in half a year. It's just you need everything to kind of fall in the right place as you go, and set these benchmarks. I think that was my contribution to that process. Was I kept saying to Gary, we're launching Indiegogo, so we need this. Hey, the playback article's coming out, so we got to get this next draft done.
TikTok. That's what I mean. Like as soon. Sorry to interrupt, but
no.
in my experience, and I'm hearing the same in this feat, which is a feat. But I started at a film co-op, so the attitude was always, you'll get as much done as you need to.
Yeah.
Right. So as soon as you start, or you move into the apartment you can't quite afford as a student, you'll work to get the money you need to stay there. Ideally, not always. Sometimes you choose amongst the bills and stuff like that. We've had a few conversations about money, and we had a big series planned, and then COVID happened, and I personally felt like it was indelicate to be asking people and talking about money when none of us knew anything for the first 6 months. And we still don't know a lot, but we know something. And what you guys did, and when you sent me that document, I was like thrilled, because talk about someone who is well prepared to address all kinds of audiences at all kinds of levels of experience in terms of craft. That commitment to get something written because you were going to do it, and to start that wheel turning as you're writing, ensures, and this is, I just want to echo this tip because we get asked it a lot at Ink. You'll finish the script when you have to shoot the script.
Yes.
So pretend, if you can't do anything else, pretend that I am going to call you, or Warren's going to call you, or Gary's going to call you next week, or Jen Pogue, or whoever, and they're going to say, Film Coop's going to say, so we heard you're working on something, how close are you? Get up every morning and act like it needs to be closer every minute of the day.
Yeah.
Or nothing will happen. Nobody, as my mentor used to say, the world will keep turning if you never write a thing.
Schedule a table read, because that was a big thing for Gary and I, because we knew we needed a really good, 100-page draft of the script. And it was kind of not quite there until that table read. And I kept saying to Gary, there's going to be 20 actors around a table. They got to read something. And that those types of deadlines, I think, are crucial on a timeline like this for a low budget production, just to keep it moving forward. Because if you don't have those timelines, then you don't do anything.
You need goalposts. You have to have them. The way I've sewn that into mentorships lately, and this is very new, because I always felt like, well, I'm just advising you. It's not really my business to tell you how to do you. But if I really do find saying what we're going to accomplish for sure in this phase is you are going to submit this script to people you don't know.
Right.
You're just going to have something for a deadline.
And I will say the one thing that Gary's gotten used to is that sort of feedback, because before we would write in a bubble and we wouldn't really get readers' notes or coverage. But I remember when we went to Raven Banner, who they're amazing. They came on board very early, but the coverage of the movie that they got was awful. Like it was the type of coverage where and I'm friends with Andrew Hunt and Michael and James there. They were like, do you want to do this movie? And I just had to say, you just have to believe me on this.
Yeah.
Because, I sent the script out to, many of my friends, my filmmaker friends. And that's the one great thing about this community is you don't ask for it all the time, but like once in a while you can ask someone to read a script. And it's hard because, I get asked and you get asked, we all get asked to read scripts. And it's hard because it takes 4 hours for me to read a script and write notes and everything, right? It's not just a 90 minute. But getting the feedback from people and then sharing it with Gary, I mean, I all those different notes that we got really did thematically because what you need is volume. You need a lot of notes. You need a lot of feedback and then see what the themes are and what the notes on the notes are. Because sometimes the note isn't the note, but it's like, they're not understanding this part. It's not good enough.
Exactly. Especially I find in feature writers, a lot of the notes are symptoms of a problem that starts a couple pages back,
sure,
or with the inception of a character, right? But the point is, as you say, when you have an array of ideas about what you've written, you get to decide what is clearly an issue. Not one person telling you, it has to be this or else, which is TV, which we'll get to because I know you're headed there. But I don't want to, we are over time. Are you guys okay?
I'm fine.
Do you need, I wish I could like.
Are you okay? Because I know you're in the middle stuff too.
Are you guys watching us okay? Are you having a good time? Okay, because I know we have some standing questions and you've covered some of them, but I want to make sure nobody gets disappointed.
Well, the next two questions from Rhett, who plays Tosh in the movie. This film is quite complex. There are many adjacent storylines. You use recipe cards. And then Emily Schooley's question, how substantial were the changes between each draft? If you would allow me, Karen, I can show the RPL right now. Which
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So
it's really cool. And RPL is gold to people learning.
Gary, do you want to walk everybody through our RPL here? And
I don't know if I can. Can I actually move it? I don't know if I can.
Okay, I'll move it. Well, I mean, okay, I'll explain. So
yeah, because I can't actually adjust it on the screen.
Right, but everybody can see this. This is basically the template that Gary and I use, and a lot of the preamble will just be stuff that like we need to remember, like the controlling idea, trying to get rid of a thorn in family side. Mary uses the money Alexia has given them to launder to ironically pay for a hitman from their past to take out Alexei for good. So spoiler, this is the entire movie, so this is a big spoiler alert. But so this was written on February 16th, 2018, shortly after we met Max and Theo in the Starbucks with their mom. And we quickly finished putting this through. And what we like doing is once in a while, as we're writing, we'll come up with a line like everyone has a price. And this actually became the tagline that Raven Banner used for all the posters and marketing, because thematically that was the question each character needs to answer. What price are you willing to pay to get what you want? We start putting out what the controlling ideas. We try to figure out what the external theme. Eli, it's a coming of age story for Eli, which involves trying to be cool like his older brother, getting into this conservatory to be successful, meeting this amazing figure skating classmate at summer school, all these, plotty sort of things that drive the characters towards the end. But the central theme, I love visual metaphors, maybe more than Gary, but I try to find things that help me cinematically. So the idea of crossing the line is important. We do a lot of overhead shots every once in a while in the movie, and they're very deliberate. They're very deliberate moments within the story where people are crossing a line. Like in the donut diner scene where Eli is telling Laura and basically telling her their entire plan about the root and sour heist and what's going on. There's an overhead shot where Laura gets up from her side of the table, which is sort of a neutral yellow, crosses the line and sits down on the red side of the table. And that was really to demark her choice to go to, and
His
in our
side.
movie, his side, which is red, which is the bad luck side.
Right.
Sometimes you need to cross the line.
And even at the beginning of the film, it's set up that way. The overhead shot where the car pulls in and then crosses the line.
The train tracks, literally the wrong
Literally
side of the
crosses,
tracks.
goes on the other
Yeah. That motif fascinated me. I thought it was so well executed. And I'm really excited about this next paragraph at the top that you're about to scroll by that you had, because noir, like crime movies, especially heist movies, like how people get in trouble and how they get out of it, film noir is my favorite genre. And I'm really intrigued to see that you have anticipated here one of my big process questions, because I write a lot of mysteries, and as one of our questions was about how complex the story is, you wrote the entire scenario heist-wise, or bags of money-wise. You wrote it all out before you went to script, or is this something you sort of articulated as you were writing the script?
Gary?
Well, Warren and I knew that there was going to be money laundering going on, so we had to think very clearly what that is. We had to go in and people hear about it all the time, but exactly what does it mean? I mean,
what does it look like in front of a camera with characters we can see, and it's not a newsreader explaining it all to you.
And also heists. We had to research how heists really, there's movie heists Ocean's 8 and Ocean's 11 and everything. But there's a line that gets a lot of mileage in the movie where Laura basically tells Eli, "This plan is stupid. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And Eli goes, "This is how most heists happen."
And that's actually true.
It's like one little diversion, grab the thing, run. And that's kind of
we researched that. We looked that up, and then they do that. People steal stuff in that really, really simple way.
Yeah. It's about the window of opportunity. I study the other side, which is investigating how they got away with it or did not.
Right.
So I was really pleased, just as someone who works a lot with real crime, to see screenwriters who are actually thinking, because let's be honest, if you write any other genre, this is world building. If you're writing criminal organizations or liaisons, you have to understand how they live and work. And if you don't, you're going to get into trouble with the readers and people like me.
And none of this ever made the movie. This whole laundering, we don't even get into it, but we knew what it was. So
it informed your characterizations and the choices they made and so on.
And then the next chunk we kind of spent some time on, and this is all through the writing preamble process that Gary's talking about, where we just get together for 8 hours and talk about nothing.
Right.
Themes will start coming out. It should be called Things I Do for Love. We came up with Eli's daydream, which will be triggered by music, and that he'll have an artistic motif throughout the movie. All the money in the world won't fix problems. Beginning of the film, money is everything. End of the film, money's second to family and life. And we'll just keep writing these themes, like find one's place in the world, loving the unattainable, what can't be bought, lines as metaphors. Which side of the line are you? I mean, there's moments. There's a shot of the ice rink where it's just a red line, again, red being bad luck in the movie, and Laura's skate just kind of just gracefully touches the side of it because she's starting to get pulled into what's happening. And then we go into our character work, and this is for us to remember who these people are. Eli's the smart one. Nick is idolized by Eli. Nick's timing is off. It's something that there was a question about when did the cello element come into play. It was always going to be about cello.
Yeah.
The music was central to the storyline from the beginning.
And then we start bringing in things like in the Yaguchi family, saving face is more than affection or honesty. That's a very Japanese Canadian sort of thing. Saving face, being proud of who you are. And then Eli's lesson is life is an academic. Theory is one thing, but reality is another. So when Eli starts his story off, he's deeply rooted in what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to practice. And it's about pulling all that away as the movie goes on to become his true self. And we just kind of do this through all the characters and all the different, obviously we weren't quite done with Brenda and Alexi.
Yeah, wait, Warren. So back up a bit there. When you showed Laura, the very first line I think is so funny and interesting. Maybe not skating, but something more doable. Because
that was my note. That was my note.
that was my question. I was like, you're writing
about
music, you're writing really highly skilled special talent with inherent production risk.
We talked about the idea of a figure skate. Like we wanted something that would be something that Eli could look to, someone that Eli could look to and be enamored of the skill that that person's exhibiting. And we came up with figure skating that is so physical and so graceful and
expressive.
And beautiful. And incredibly visual. Like it can be very cinematic. And in the film, it is like the way it's shot. But it's just funny that's written there but maybe something more doable. Like it's because we really had no idea if we could do this. So anyway, go on.
And we found her. We found Yoda Teodoros, who's amazing. She'd never acted before, but she was a professional skater.
Yeah.
She's a phenomenal Black teenage figure skater. And when we found her, or she found us really through Creative Theater Company and some of the acting teachers, Jennifer Walton and Claudette Brundage Hampson, they put us in contact with her. And she basically said, Warren, I read the breakdown, I read the script. If you didn't find me, you weren't going to find anybody. Because she had sort of bumped into one other Black figure skater from the States once. And figure skating is just one of those
very tight-knit communities.
Yeah, and it's racist. It is not welcoming to certain skaters. And, I think that also speaks to when we were putting together the cast. I mean, Rhett Morita's on the Zoom right now. Rhett Morita is a phenomenal cinematographer. He's award-winning. He shot Ruby Sparks. He shot TV. He shot movies, music videos, commercials. And he saw my casting breakdown on Facebook, and he just messaged me out of the blue. He's like, Warren, what's up, man? Listen, I feel for you, brother. You're not going to find this guy. 40, 50-year-old Japanese Canadian male non-union actor. If you were going to be an actor at all, as a male Japanese Canadian, you would be working. You'd be Hiro Kanagawa and be doing awesome stuff. But there's outside of that in the non-union world, there's just not the opportunity for Japanese male actors to do a lot of work. Like it just hasn't been the case. So the scarcity of Japanese Canadian actors, the scarcity of a Black figure skating teenager speaks to why a movie like this, I think, is important for all sorts of reasons, not just for me personally, but just to make stuff like this so that there are opportunities and we do put new faces on the screen and tell stories from a different perspective. So yeah, I mean, we kind of right from the beginning, because we knew we really wanted Brenda, controlling matriarch who owns a car dealership, which is a front for a chop shop, and never wanted the responsibility of caring for Laura to begin with, but she was saddled with her after her parents died, ironically, in a car crash. We knew the vision for Brenda was always going to be a very strong Black matriarch, sort of wheelchair bound, but controlling the criminal underworld of Hamilton. So we knew that Laura was also going to be from the same family, and we had to cast specifically for that. So we go through the characters, and then we get into the bulk of what the RPL is. And I'm not gonna, I mean, this is 12 pages of this, but you can kind of see from the very beginning, opening image, setup, metaphor, and theme, crossing a line, overhead shot of a street in the middle line clearly, cutting the screen in center. Alexi and Gonzo drive up the top of the screen. Alexi gets out of the car, crosses the line. opening action sequences. Alexei kills scene for money, set up what Alexei wants and why and who's he up against. Brenda wants to go legit, so we have this idea of why he's doing it. He takes the first bag of money, and we're intercutting it with here, the conservatory recital and Eli crossing off what he's doing. We actually didn't have an opening cello sequence. That came later when we realized we got to start the movie off with cello music. I mean, that's what the movie is, right?
Of course. Have you seen them play? Yes, you do.
But, this kind of answers the two questions that are out there for Emily about, how substantial were the changes between each draft. Once we had this RPL, the changes were rarely structural and more within the scene. I think we did a lot of heavy lifting with this RPL, figuring out, it's kind of the movie. It goes doom, 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 doom. Even, Karen Dantas asked, what was the inspiration behind the consortium? We just love Fargo. We love the Coen brothers' sort of dark perspective on crime. And we knew there was something to be said about Hamilton being run by a bunch of grandma and grandpas around a bingo table. So that was, where is it down here? That was there right from the beginning, having this idea of the bingo. Where is it? So yeah, I mean, it's Bingo Hall. Brenda has to deal with the Turcotte fallout. So it was always sort of within it. And also, Rhett was asking about the first sort of major turn for Laura, where alleyway rash decisions. Laura and Eli make it down after everything has stopped. Sirens are heard approaching. Eli sees the bag in front of Jimmy's car. Jimmy can't be seen on the side of the firefighter, unconscious. Laura comes up beside him, sees the bags, opens it. Why? What possesses her to open it? Really don't know how this happens. Do you? They see the money in small bills. Laura wants to take it. Eli says it isn't theirs. Tracks the consequence of the bag of money throughout.
Sorry, Warren.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt for a sec?
Yeah.
What the different colors here, people, so everyone knows, are questions that Warren and I are writing to each other. These are these
Cool.
questions there. They're questions that, we've done this, and then we'll go back to it, and we will write in. I don't remember who did these questions, but I remember that that's what happened. He would say,
I'm red, you're blue, basically.
Yeah, and I would say, well, why did this happen? Why did the character do this at this point? And so that kind of goes back to the question about intent, and also to the way in which we work. So
this is on Google Docs, basically. It's a shared Google Doc, and we just kind of
so we go back and forth, and we write and add to this document that we know is going to be our master document, if you will.
And I think we landed on, Rhett, just to answer your question about why did Laura take the bag of money, we landed on it because she has been around this throughout her life, being the granddaughter of Brenda. So she hasn't really been in this situation before, but she would have been more prone to be proactive in that moment than Eli would have. And really, we wanted her to be making a strong choice at that moment. So that's why we made that decision.
Can I ask you something, though, further to Rhett's question, which is many of the characters in the story, and I'm not counting the career criminals, make choices at crucial moments that may or may not endear them to the audience. That's my shorthand for it. And did you have any fear that people would or would not, quote unquote, this is my favorite bugaboo, so bear with me, like them? Did you worry about people who our hearts were with and if they would be broken as the young people became more and more wound up in this story?
We always want, I don't know, Gary, I think we always want our audience to like our main characters and go on the ride with them. I think that's why we do the ball tap early on. That's why, there's this moment between Mary Gucci, played by Jennifer Walton, and her son Eli, when he's making apples and almond butter, and that becomes a runner throughout the entire movie.
Yes.
And also, Alexei, some of the quips he says, they're intentional to warm people up to him, even though he's like a nasty son of a bitch. Like he's a psychopath, like he's crazy. But he says and does things that are kind of Fargo-esque, funny.
Yeah. And then we show his family later on, and what he's fighting for, what he's doing for money.
Like he's a real person.
But for instance, and also we made a very conscious decision, and I'm glad you picked up on this, Karen, that the choices by the women in this movie basically drive the movie forward.
Yes.
If Laura never takes that bag of money, or if Mary Yaguchi never calls just Jimmy to come in from Vancouver after being estranged for 10 years, none of this would have happened.
Exactly.
And because of those choices, the narrative, I liked there's one description of Michael Mann's Heat where Waingro, the character, is the viral element. So we try to find what the viral element within the story, and just Jimmy is that viral element. And but we wanted the mechanism of these viral elements to be instigated by the female characters in the movie, because a lot of the story about Eli is rippled in Tosh and just Jimmy's characters, in that Tosh is stuck too. Like the very first line that Mary Yaguchi says in the movie is, "No, we're just stuck. If someone doesn't do anything, nothing's going to happen." And that is the entire movie in the first line. And the first line of Eli and Nick when they're walking in the street, "Come on, keep up." That is their theme for the entire movie. It's one brother trying to keep up with the other, and then Eli finally ascends beyond Nick, and then Nick has to keep up with Eli, and then at the end they're on the same plane. Yeah. So Gary and I constantly try to use dialogue as indicators of what the themes are going to be. And it was a conscious choice, and we know that some of these choices that people make aren't likable, but I think they're real in the situations they're in. Garrett, what do you think?
Yeah, we tried as much as possible to not, like, I in particular have a real problem when people do things that they do them just because they're in a movie, and that would never happen in real life. And so in that respect, we tried very hard that the things that happen in this film, in the context of the world that we've created, are relatively plausible. I mean, within the context of the world, but at the same time, we are making conscious decisions about the way in which they're behaving. Like, that the things they say at the very beginning are some summaries of their characters or the story itself and such. And those were things that they don't show up in the first draft. Like they come out with time.
Yes, Christine Wu, it's RPL is rough plot line. That's just me and Gary's jargon. I don't think you'll ever see that in a book anywhere, but that's what we call it. The RPL. We always work off the RPL. So
great minds. You answered, I hit send. This is fantastic, you guys. And can we get a prequel about the consortium?
Yes. Well, it's funny when we were making that scene, and it's the bingo parlor scene kind of comes in the middle of the film, middle to end. And in the editing process, a lot of the notes we got in the edit was, can you bring that scene up sooner? Because it really shows the tone of what the movie is. And I was really hoping that opening scene with Dax Lowe and Chris Drew and Danilo Reyes, where Alexei beats the crap out of Turcotte. I was hoping that would play a little bit more funny than it does, but it's just brutally violent. But there is the capper of, like, I didn't know we were doing beatings today.
Beatings all day, every day.
Yeah.
And we were kind of hoping that would set the tone that you're allowed to laugh in this movie.
Yeah.
But we noticed when we were testing the film, and when we were playing, the Whistler Film Festival went nuts for the bingo parlor scene. We got cheers and claps, and
it was great. In Whistler, it was really great in the end, particularly on the second night, because it was an audience that didn't really know us. It was people,
and it was an older audience. It was a lot of grandmas and grandpas in that audience.
And they loved
the film festival, and it's a bit of escapism for them. but it's something I think, having known that specifically for crime, because this is the first crime movie I've made, I would have maybe brought that scene up sooner just to establish tone. So that's a thing for writers to remember, that when you're trying to thread a needle between dark comedy and drama and crime and cello and a caper film, try to, as much as possible in the first 3 scenes, establish what the tone is so people know they're allowed to laugh.
Can I address that as well, Warren?
Yeah.
The issue of tone. We talked a lot, particularly during the edit, about the tone of the film, and it was very hard to make it be what it was we had in our heads and what we had written, because, as Warren said, we in our heads we're referencing Fargo or shows, or either shows or films of that nature, and to try and convey that on the written page was so difficult. And a lot of the notes were that we got back were kind of like that. Like, this movie's all over the place. Like, why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense. But in our head, it made lots of sense. And then once it was filmed, there were ways of editing it to sort of really encapsulate the tone better. And so, like, when the telephone conversation that Alexi ends up having, that
3-way call,
Yeah. Hold on. I did 3-way call. Excellent. That was so. I gave you the Cohen Prize on that scene.
Well, and I think also, Gary, I think you were pretty surprised at how much I wanted you to be there through the edit and the whole process. Like, I opened the door. I'm like, you are part of this. You're not just a writer. You're a co-conspirator on this, and much more than I've ever done before on any of my other features. And in no way am I disrespecting the writers I've worked with, but because Gary and I have been best friends for 20 some odd years, like, Gary was in the edit suite whenever he could get away and come in to Toronto from teaching. He'd come in and he'd sit 12 hours with Anna Catley, who did an amazing job editing.
And what I found immensely flattering, to be quite honest, is like, they would turn to me, Warren and Anna, and say, so, and oh, what? I thought I was just sitting here. And I say, well, what about, I think that, and I would give my feedback, and sometimes it showed up. Like, I say, oh, well, that was cool. Let's try that. And so, Anna would try things, and there'd be some suggestion of mine. I go, I watched them go, I helped make that happen. Like, in the edit, not just the writing, but the actual edit as well.
In the final cut.
Like, very rewarding.
And that's one thing, going back to one of the first questions I asked Karen, is when if you're just writing screenplays and wanting to manifest destiny and get that screenplay produced, and you are lucky enough to find a filmmaker, writer that you can collaborate with and work on these things, my hope always was to find someone that I could bring in at all levels of the creative process and trust that they would give me the sort of perspective that I lack, or tell me, when I'm keeping me honest. And Gary is that for me. It does not happen all the time. I don't know, have you been, whether it's feature, TV, the showrunners in the edit suite all the time, but on features, I think it's kind of rare to bring the writer into the edit room.
Okay, I'll address that on a couple of levels, because there are more than one. Yeah. So first of all, I want to give people context. The only feature film that I've had made, I've had feature-length films made, but they were made specifically for broadcast. But when you have a feature film intended for theatrical made, in my case, that was an independent thing, started exactly the same way you two started. It was me and the director saying, we got to do something together. And if we don't do it soon, we're never going to get to do it, because you're going this way and I'm going this way. But we really dig each other's stuff, even though it couldn't have been farther apart. Sensibility-wise, we spoke the same language. We didn't come from the exact same cultures, but we were looking at each other's work going, wow, that's cool. I enjoy that immensely, but I can't do it. And the director was doing the same thing.
Right.
So is the writer included? Because this comes up at Ink a lot, because there's a lot of confusion amongst new writers of any age about they have to hold on to their idea because someone's going to steal it and wreck it, man. And if there's one thing I could disavow, especially the brave souls who are coming to the craft and the careers from traditionally underrepresented communities, do not accept that particular t-shirt for your first wardrobe entry into the business. Do not accept it's really old-fashioned to think you invented an idea. No one has done it before. That's really old-fashioned. Like that takes a special level of privilege to think that no one in the entire history of the world of all people has ever thought of a conflict like this. That's crazy. It's gonna happen. It's happened to me. It happens all the time. But in terms of staying involved with your production, that's something that happens because the collaboration of your story and what it's going to take to get it made stays healthy and, as Warren says so well, honest. So if you are seeing yourself as a diva who creates these brilliant notions and hopes other people will read your mind and execute them for you, verbatim, that's not understanding what screenwriting is. Do I accompany my work all the way through? You bet your ass I do, because I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. So I don't come on unless I have skin in the game, because like Gary, I have a whole life I could be having. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life sitting in a really cold chair next to a hooded camera that's got more, insulation on it than I will ever have, hoping that it works out. Like, that's one way to spend your life if you're lucky enough to get a career doing this. But the other side of getting a career doing this is knowing when to say no and yes. And sometimes that, in fact, I would say 80% of the time, that involves your own discretion, which you, as Gary says about writing, you learn what you know by doing it. And you said that because I had written so many scripts and shot a lot of stuff, I could look at the process and bring this to it. And Gary was bringing something else. So a really great writer is not a homogenous entity or role in a production. There are some kinds of writers who literally cannot handle being anywhere near actors. They get all and they freak out and they say unfortunate things, and then actors are crying or thinking they can write the lines now, or there's all kinds of dynamics. It is a separate responsibility. But if you're a mature person, no matter how old you are biologically, and you want to participate in a useful and supportive and collaborative manner, most writers do. Like in television, writers on most shows are in charge of their episode from the writer's department. So they're seeing it all the way through. In film, it's a little trickier, especially in Canada, because we value an auteur culture as well as an auteur filmmaker. An auteur is just, a director who perhaps writes their own material and runs the show top down. And that's a bit antiquated, and it's imported from Europe as a style of shooting. It's not how Hollywood does it. It's not how New York does it. It's not how all my favorite documentaries around the world do it. It's not how independent filmmakers do it. If they have this golden opportunity to keep making the work better and more effective by following it all the way through. The illusion of locking a script is a really old idea that I'll bore y'all with a history lesson on mass producing movies someday, and explain where half the terminology that we use these days is based on a whole idea about making movies that none of us signed up for. So don't worry about it. There are ways to work on your skills as a writer who sits home alone in my pajamas all the time, like 4 weeks on end, talking to no one except online, because that keeps me alive.
It keeps us doing stuff too on ink, right? So,
but if
writing sprints.
Some kind of, writing sprints, or even an outlet to talk about somebody else's problem. But the bottom line is there are ways to become a writer who is better prepared to support the ideas you're presenting for the other artists who have to do it. It's one thing to write a brilliant scene. It's another thing to act it. It's another thing to shoot it. It's another thing to mic it. So the more
find the location for it, and
yeah. The more you know about the process, the more useful you can be. When you're not useful and the chips are down when you're shooting in post, people are going to ask you to get out of the way.
But yeah, I totally echo what you just said, and I think the biggest thing for me is through this process, I just realized how important finding that other co-writer was, and finding that co-writer that I literally could put the thing in the hands of and go, I trust you. I have to do this. I trust you with this.
What do you think? And that's the goal, right? That's the goal. It's so unfortunate to expect one director to do everything and do everything well through the shoot and post.
Yeah.
Like, I find that crazy making just to watch it. And I've watched, like, most of my friends are auteurs. Right. So it's really interesting. And I have a final question, because I'll look at you, 29 of you, just hanging in there.
Thank you so much.
I just want you to know, thank you so much. And you can ask questions anytime, but I have a question about one photo. And I know it came from the guys. El Mariachi, influence, not an influence?
Well, the guitar, the guitar
case. You talk about the film and then tell me if it was in the back of your mind. But I saw that photo, I went, I can't wait to see this movie. And then I'm watching the movie going, I wonder.
I think Fargo, Gary, was more of a inspiration.
Fargo, movie or TV show?
And the series. We love the series.
I love the series.
The series is so good. It's so, but like, gets better each season as it gets in. But in terms of tone and Fargo definitely embodies Fargo, and Hamilton was important to us as well. So what else did we reference, Gare, when we were putting this together?
Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah.
Those kinds of Guy Ritchie films, like that kind of.
Oh, it's Pulp Fiction, Gary. It's awesome. It's a whole subgenre.
I wish.
and then Whiplash had just come out while we were while we were doing it before, like
I think just before.
And when we saw the drum sequences in that, we were like, we want to do to cello what Whiplash did for the drums, and
make it real, like so that they're really doing it.
Yeah,
I have to tell you what you did in the story with the incredible talents that you were working with in terms of the
Max and Theo, yeah.
Oh my God, it was incredible. I watch a lot of movies, you guys, because I work and I have to write, but also because I sit on a lot of juries. And I have never put a movie down and immediately jumped on the computer going, where's the soundtrack? Did I miss that link? Where is the soundtrack?
In the fall, in the winter, the soundtrack and a special Blu-ray DVD will be coming out with a whole bunch of extras. And Max and Theo wrote over 50 cues of discrete music within the film, including, so the last piece is called Monument. That's the 6-minute climax of the film.
That's your Eminem, like 8 Mile.
Yeah, it's the Lose Yourself theme, basically.
And I literally went, I will buy this song anywhere. Where is it?
And we really hope that.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, because there's not a lot of double cello music written. Like there's Vivaldi, there's like Bach, and we
I love that line where
do a little bit of Bach.
We'll do some Bach, we'll do some Vivaldi, and then we'll get out of there.
It's a cellist joke. But this music that they wrote is so spectacular that I really do think it will become a double cello classic. And if for the writers out there, when you are honing in on the ideas that you want to write about and you want to create, and then you eventually want to shoot, especially if it's going to be a low budget, micro budget film, our film is in that realm of talent to watch budgets, right? $160,000. It's not much more than the $125 that they get. But the difference is, obviously, I've made films before, so I could swing the bat a little farther in terms of the scope. So,
Yeah.
35 locations, 56 speaking parts, 144 background.
Okay.
But Gary and I always knew the cello was going to be the star, and then it was in the hands of Max and Theo. But the art of writing a story around just the idea of cello music, that's where I think Gary and I did the heavy lifting narratively to figure out why. Why does this matter? What's at stake? Okay, so there's an audition. Well, every music or dance movie is about an audition. But what if at this moment of the audition, they have to do something else, which is steal something that they shouldn't be stealing? And then what if their conscience gets to them where they have to come up with an entirely other plan so that they aren't actually bad at their core? And, there's that twist that we kind of drive the movie to that I don't think anybody sees coming at the end. So, which we won't spoil right now.
And so, and also addressing the song Monument, the way they actually wrote that song was, we knew even before they wrote it that we wanted to film it the way it actually plays out, so that they wrote the pieces for that song that are reflective of what the visuals are showing. Like the
motel scene.
We asked them specifically, we need a shootout. So we're going to be seeing the shootout scene. You're going to be playing, but we're going to cut away to that while you're still playing. Then we're going to cut back. So we knew all this beforehand, and it was a really weird sort of dynamic that they did, because they had to write this thing for something that had yet to happen, but was going to happen in the story. That was, we were going to film it like just the way
they had. And they had to write it in a month, Walty. They had to write this piece of music within a month because we were going to camera, and they had to. It's like a music video, right? They had to perform this music on screen in sync with what the music is. So the music had to be done.
And it's really. Well, and the other thing is, that was the other thing. This is the one thing that was actually kind of funny, is that Warren and I realized that we wanted Eli to have a thing he couldn't do, and so Warren said,
in the piece.
What if he couldn't play that one piece? So then they had to make it even harder so that it would be, because Max and Theo are perfectionists, and they didn't want anything to not be real. So when you watch it, it's really them playing. Like, the parts that you hear them playing are really them playing. So the part that they have Theo playing is actually incredibly difficult to do.
Yes.
And
yes,
that's why, and he keeps screwing it up because it is in fact really, really hard to do.
He basically says it's kind of impossible to do it.
This was my favorite moment when he goes and his brother, he's trying in front of whoever she is, the teacher or whatever that role is in their career advancement.
Yeah.
And he's trying, and he's like, he can't get it. And my favorite line was her saying, "You wrote it."
Yeah.
Which I went, to me, that's when, as a writer, I went, hello. Very sophisticated teamwork going on here with this young man. What? Because I can now tell you, I stay away from too much information about a movie before I watch it.
Sure.
So I had all your information, and I was using what I needed to know to go out there and invite our fabulous partners here. Oh, right on. Thank you. I didn't want to ask, but I'm so glad.
I think Colin just asked what it was.
Yeah, I saw Colin's question.
So it's like Mr. Venito, at first distracted by talking to his seatmate, turns to the performance and listens skeptically. Nick smiles. Eli tenses. The brothers begin. Cello performance 6, full band audition piece. We didn't even know what it was going to be, right? The audience gets into it. His boys play their hearts out. Laura Nolan walks towards Alexi at the back of the room, sees them, quietly turns, and then we cut to the motel.
Hold on, I have a question now. What did your script timing? How did that work for music?
Oh, there was no script timing
because you've got.
I didn't have a script.
You didn't time.
No,
okay,
I didn't have a script supervisor, unfortunately. So
yeah, this is awesome.
Basically, we were like, okay, we need kind of a minute of this, 2 minutes of this. We know that the motel sequence is going to happen first, and it's about a page long, so it's like a minute. We go into actually talking within the scene with the analogous music that's playing. So we need you to bring it down so we can hear what the conversation between Alexi and Laura is.
Wow.
And then there's the chase outside the mansion, and and then we get into the escarpment scene. And Gary and I knew that we wanted to narratively tie up all the different storylines, because the last minute of the movie is just about the boys playing.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to cloud it with any clunky plot narrative. We just wanted them to perform their guts out. And it really is, we've had cellists watch this movie and go, this is the best representation of cello in a movie we've ever seen. And that's something we're proud of.
Yeah, we worked very hard to make that happen. Like the time spent in the editing room for the cello scenes was considerable to get the timing right, and it's really tricky, but it worked out. It looks great.
It was absolutely worth it. It shows to the uninitiated viewer like me. It's hard, Gary, we've just met. It's hard to rock me. I was like, holy crap. And what did this look like on paper? I was the same as many of the writers were. I was like, how the heck did this happen? And how did you put it down so that you actually got to execute it? It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. I was like, full blast, very sincere, very loud sound system on. Yeah. And I love music and films. I collect soundtracks, and I had never heard anything like that. Kudos to both of you.
Well,
to the guys who are, I'm sorry, I'm not creepy in any way. I'm just like completely fanning out on what they're able to do playing wise. Like, I've never heard that sound before, and I loved it.
Your reaction was my reaction the first time I heard them play.
Good.
So,
good.
And that was why I said to Warren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not we've got a question for you, Gary.
Yeah,
do you avail yourself of many screenwriting competitions out there?
Not unless Warren wants to. Pretty much.
We're not big.
On the this precludes my next question, so we'll do A, B. My next question was going to be, so how many scripts did you write before you got this one done?
Right.
So the first part is competitions. Were you doing that stuff?
We've written stuff for the Harold Greenberg Fund, I think.
For grants and funds. We've
not competitions, no.
And full disclosure, I'm with the Canadian Film Fest, and we run the Harold Greenberg Fund script competition, which I think is a great competition because there's cash money involved at the end of the tunnel. Some competitions don't include that. So I think they're important for writers that need deadlines, that want to get certain things done, but certainly don't enter the competition wanting or needing to win it. You know what I mean? I don't think that's the purpose of it. I think it's a process thing. And it's tough. I mean, I'm probably not the right person to ask because I also failed film school. So like, I don't want to be a contest winner when I make a movie. I just want to make the movie.
I just want to make the movie. Yeah. I want someone else to say, you got to make this movie. And so I make it. We could have gone the Telfirm route and tried to raise funds, and like I put $60,000 of my own money into the movie. Sorry, Dad, I know you're listening, but and I'll recoup it, which is great. But I didn't want to wait 2 years and get a no from funding agencies out there. We just wanted to do it.
And the other thing that by virtue of the way it was made was the extent of the control that Warren and I had, and Warren in particular, obviously, but. I mean, we weren't beholden to anybody, and everyone respected Warren's vision, if you will, and what we had created, and we could then go about doing it. So we didn't have to. The things we changed were things that had to be changed because we knew they had to be changed, not because someone said you can't do this.
That was a moment. We had a scene on a rooftop, which was originally written at night. It was written at night, and the alleyway scene, the shootout, was written at night, and I loved it. We were going through it. It was written in the white draft, the second draft, and then when we got to the production draft, I'm like, okay, Gary, this is daytime. And you went,
Fuck no.
You went ballistic, and I literally go ahead.
Sorry, the reason, because I'm fully aware that you can't have people say the things they'll say at night that they won't say them in the daytime. It's just the daytime is different. There's a reason that people get all cozy at nighttime, and then they say things they wouldn't otherwise say because people can't see them as well, because they're slightly hidden, because their guard is slightly down because it's dark outside. And so
the world is sleeping, and that's not.
There's all these other opportunities why and reasons for why these things had to happen. This, particularly the conversations that were going on between Eli and Laura on the roof. So Warren said, "Well, it can't happen," and I was livid. I was like, "What? There's fucking no way." But and there's another scene as well that also it has to do with something that happens in the film. That was the same thing. We can't do that, and I was like, we have to do something else. You know what I'm talking about, right, Warren?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and it was literally, I had to pull Gary aside, especially about the rooftop thing, because to me it's a no-brainer. It's right. Daytime. I can't put lights up there. I have limited access. It's not safe.
It's not good to do it that way.
It's just not going to happen. Yeah. And literally the conversation was like, Gary, this is exactly what I prepared you for when we started out, last October when you were in Halifax, that there's going to come a time when you're just going to have to understand that I'm going to be the director and tell you how it's going to go. And this is the time. And it was one of those moments where we just kind of got through it, and it
was fine. Yeah. But we had to rewrite. Like I had to rewrite some of the scene because it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And the dialogue just was too forced if it said during the daytime. And then Warren's busy doing his shit, and I got to go do this and come back, and things of that nature were frustrating. But to Warren's credit, and to my tenacity, by the end, it was different. Like Warren was saying, that there was stuff that had to happen that we had to rewrite the very end dialogue between Nick and Eli in the car. We wanted to fix it. It just wasn't, we had to punch it up a bit or whatever and fix it. And Warren was like, there was so much going on at that point. And Warren's like exhausted. He's getting 2 hours sleep a night and whatever. He said, just do it. And he trusted me to do it because I'd gone through the process. And so I was able to, and he said to me at the end, he said, you did it. Like you sort of were able to rise to the occasion and
Gary basically wrote the entire driving lesson scene, which ends.
Okay. Gary made me cry, which never happened. I did not see that scene either coming. And I went, wow, what a perfect series of notes to end that particular chapter of the relationship story. I want a sequel.
Well, we could have ended anywhere. Like there's like 3 or 4 endings. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 endings, but really, when you look at Things I Do for Money as a story, it's a story about the 2 brothers. Period. I mean, that's kind of where it begins and ends. Yeah. We have Tosh and just Jimmy paralleling Eli and Nick. I mean, they're basically constructed to say, if Eli and Nick aren't careful, they're going to end up like their dad and their uncle, estranged, not talking for 10 years.
I thought was beautiful. And by the way, I was convinced I had seen Uncle, just Jimmy, in all kinds of cinema. I had not for a moment because he was so great. Just wanted to drop that in there. Not speaking to anyone particular, but I was blown away. I was like, who is that? Why have I not seen this actor before? I must have seen this actor before.
That's funny. And
no joke, I am not exaggerating. If I had...
Oh, thank you.
It's one of the few times I usually keep notes while I'm writing, again, because I watch hundreds of hours a week of stuff. And I did not take my notebook into the room I watched the movie on purpose so that I could just enjoy it, because I knew I would enjoy it. And had I, you would have the little notes on the performances from me that I would have gladly sent you. But unfortunately, you're a victim of your own success in this particular case. Oh my goodness. I see.
Yeah, I'm asking our special
I see my
guests
new heroes. I'm embarrassed now.
To maybe come in. Maximilian, and there's Rhett Morita, who plays Tosh in the movie Things to Do for Money. Rhett, you can.
Hello, hi guys. I'm your new fan. How are you? Well done, bravo.
And the Aokis, Alicia, Theo, Max, and Ed, who plays just Jimmy. Their uncle, not their father. Their father played by Rhett Morita there. Hello, everybody.
That's right. Bravo, bravi. Such an incredible film. How did you guys feel about the script when you first saw it?
Oh, I mean, for my brother and I, at back then and up to this point, we have no clue what we're doing, and we're just kind of been going along for the ride. So when Warren and Gary met up with us and pitched us this idea, and we kind of saw, I think they showed us the RT,
The rough plot line.
the rough plot line, the RPL.
Yeah, there you go. Yay, you passed today's lesson.
And we've been very, very, very excited about listening to all this, all the conversations too. So thank you.
Please.
So we saw the rough plot line. We saw, the first draft of the script, the second draft, the third draft. Every step of the way, we were talking with them about how it's going to unfold, even before we had the music and anything. So it was just it was an adventure it was super, super. We're honored to kind of see the whole process from start to finish.
Oh my God, what an incredible story.
And Rhett is used to reading scripts because he's shot so many different films, but this is the first time you actually had to look at it from the acting perspective. Was that a different machine that you had to use?
I mean, obviously, I'm used to analyzing a script by lighting. I'll see it in shots. I'll go, oh yeah, I need to have a 18K up on a crane. That's going to be an 85 mil. And this time I was only focused on in fact, the first two reads, I could only really think about my scenes. Like all actors.
You're such an actor.
Just me. What about me? What do I get to do? So it was completely different for me to try to translate the film. And I said one thing to Warren later. I've written Warren just recently about how when I read the script, it was so complex. I was a little lost and concerned about how this was going to come off. I said, I volunteered to help to be on this movie. Oh my God, there's so much happening. I hope we can pull this off. And that's what I thought, because I have shot at least 3 of those independent features that are in the winter with 4 to 5 actors, horror movies. I've shot 3 of those in my life. So I know that's the typical low budget template that you use. And this was not following any of those so-called wise decisions.
So when you go back, have you shot since? And how did being on the other side of the camera and having different control
I have shot
alter what you do since behind the camera? Does that make sense?
I have a different perspective of what actors do now. But in fact, I actually work more now as an actor in 2 years than I do as a director of photography.
Well, I'm not surprised. As you know, I am a big fan.
Because of what Warren said, though, it's also the fact that there's such a small niche group of middle-aged Asian actors that it's not that I'm really that great. I have very little competition. There's so few for them to choose. It's kind of scared and sad, but it's a reality.
It's scared and sad and terrible, but now we can make up for lost time. We can make up for a whole bunch of values that were imposed upon everybody as if it was correct.
Yes.
We now know the difference we get when we actually tell stories with people we see all over the world, and we would love to know what they go through. The bottom line is the themes and the universal is the same, and the execution of your performances and the performances of you guys and the cello and the soundtrack and everything, and Warren knowing Gary for such a long period of their lives.
Starting at the keg, slinging stakes. And
the keg started it all. Did you see this coming at this kind of like explosion of screen diversity talent?
I don't know.
Egg.
Yeah, I don't know what I would say to my 16-year-old self, but I knew that hanging out with Gary was only a good thing, and being creative with Gary only was fun, and a lot of good things came out of it. But as soon as we all committed when Max and Theo said we're in, and then when Rhett reached out to me on Facebook and said, "Brother, I'm going to help you because I know you're not going to do this."
This is insane.
As we put together the team, Christoph Benfey, the cinematographer, all the Hamilton team, Kelly Carney, and then, the producing team, Film Coop, Jen, Emily, Laura, and then Abby Fettergreen with Fettergreen Productions, Raven Banner coming on board, John Lang and Urban Post-Production, and Mark Gingras, who they're champions of independent film.
Yes.
They work on so many of our movies. As we built this team, I knew that it was going to be incredibly special, and it was special to write this story. Here's the thing, and this is echoing back to one of the things you were saying earlier, Karen, was it's a crime movie. Everything Gary and I came up with in this movie is not new. It's like a heist, even the music stuff. There's music movies or dance movies, auditions. But I'm proud to watch this movie and go, no one else could have made this film, period. Like, no one else could have made this film. And I'm not just saying me as the director writer. I'm saying all of us.
All of you guys.
We needed.
It is a truly original contribution to a genre that loves original.
Yeah, even though things, it's funny. Some of the reviews are saying that it is all over the place, and there are some cliches. And
I disagree.
But I think it's like, because of Yoda Tuaderos, because of Colette Saka, because of the Aokis and Rhett, and putting in figure skating and cellos and chases and gun battles, but at the same time audition sequences, I think you get this alchemy of once in a while you can have that original thing. And this is my chance. I've not always been original, and that's on me as a filmmaker. And I've said this in other interviews. I've never cast Japanese Canadians in lead roles, and that's my fault as well, right? So in a lot of ways, I am playing catch up, like you're saying.
I started out writing for like dudes. My first 10 years in television, nothing but dudes. And it's hilarious because the side joke, and for people who don't know, is I got my opportunity to do, as you're discussing, take something that could only come from me when I started going, oh. The reason they laugh hard in the meeting but not in the screening is because in the meeting I just talk like I talk, and I think out loud the way I think, which is, it turns out, quite odd in my business. I most of my career, I was the only woman in the room of a whole bunch of writers at a time.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to figure out, there's probably something to this that I could
You can help usher into,
Never occurred to me. And so we're all ascending on a great big learning curve.
Max and Theo, go and find Ginger Snaps. Watch that movie. It changed my life when I saw it. When we talk about the Canadian film canon, it's just one of those movies that just changed the direction of so many, not just careers, but just how we made films here and how we perceive films. It was revolutionary, and it all started with your brilliant mind and pen.
You're very generous. It's 20 years old this year, so I don't know, dudes, but you might dig it. We had fun doing it, and to me, that's your film now.
I hope it keeps finding an audience.
I felt the page turning. I went, finally. someone totally else gets to own what's possible. I loved it so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to see it, but also the chance to talk to you guys. Now, do you want to say anything to these guys or the audience about making the film that we might not have nerded out on enough?
Something new that we haven't nerded out. I will say that I called Gary the day before we went to camera, and I'm so sorry, Theo. It's about you, but I'm like, Gary, I'm a little worried about Theo. because we had been rehearsing up to a point, and you were great in rehearsals, but there was a place that I didn't know if you were going to get to. And the very first day, the very first shot was Laura and Eli steal the bag of money, and they're running down the alleyway, and they stop, and Eli is like hyperventilating, and Laura gives him this gift of like,
breathe.
That becomes a runner. That becomes the breath. And we had practiced it, and it was fine the way a high school play would be fine if you were going to put on this performance. And no offense, Theo, but this was a call I had with Gary. Gary, do you remember this call?
Yeah. And
you said, don't worry, it's like they're professional cellists. Maybe it's just, it's like when LeBron James wants to turn it on and score 30 points, he'll do it, right? And that first day we got there, and it was fun. It was like meeting everybody, but we shot that first scene, and I don't know what clicked in your head, Theo. Maybe you can tell us if something clicked for you. But when you shot that scene, you weren't the same person you were 24 hours before, or the previous 4 months of working with you to get this movie made. You were an actor, and you were acting in a feature film. And I don't think I've ever told you this. Even on the ski slopes in Whistler when we were premiering the movie. But I was afraid before we went to camera, and then you proved me wrong.
Hey, thank you very much, Warren.
It's like a backhanded compliment, but like, did something click for you the night before you went to camera?
I mean, like, however much you were worried, imagine that I was like twice.
Because you had to do it. You actually had to physically do this.
The only thing stronger than my acting inexperience was my fear of letting people down.
Oh.
So it came clutch at that moment.
You did.
Possible.
Yeah.
Not possible to let anybody down.
So the hyperventilation, that wasn't an act. You were just
that was real.
You're just trying to get it all. You're just trying to hold yourself together.
That was basically my experience of that whole like crazy 13 days of filming. It was trying to reassure myself that this slow motion train wreck was actually working.
It literally was. Come on, keep up.
That was a comment on the direction, I believe.
Yeah, probably. It's not far off.
Train wreck. Yes, I've been there, man.
Yes.
I'm with you. Me and Gary and you guys, we're all on the same, and we're watching. Yep. Well, you had nothing to worry about. None of you, I don't think.
Yeah, once we got into it, it became very evident that everybody was coming with their A game, and it was a great experience. We don't, and Walter, you can attest to this. We don't always get to do that very special thing in our daily work lives, whether it's on set or writing or whatever, and all the way through this process. Even tonight, it's a very special thing to be able to talk screenwriting with one of my favorite screenwriters in Canada, and bring in my cast and my co-writer and kind of go through the process, because Gary and I talk about this stuff, but not like this.
I am so honored to even get to meet all of you. Warren and I have been like glancing each other in the odd pub and talking, and allies in the fight to, make us all as beautiful as we could be. But the chance I'm going to fangirl out to the InkCanada, they'll tease me tomorrow. Don't worry about it tomorrow. But I felt the same way. I was very nervous about talking to you guys tonight because I'm so impressed by what you pulled off. So thank you so much for the opportunity to say so to everybody, and to share so much time so generously and so many smart things. I've got notes of my own that I'm taking to my work tomorrow, where I went, I need to do that.
Viral element.
Viral element. I'm like, why haven't I heard that? RPL is going to be like the new, we'll put it on t-shirts and we'll explain it to anyone. Just, people who are at the seminar, we're like, if we were allowed to tell you, but it's involving world-class music and insanely talented artists collaborating on a crazy thing that just forced you to stand and deliver. It's my favorite story about making small films, and this didn't feel small for a minute. Thank you so much for your time and your incredible performances and work. I'm so grateful.
That's awesome. Thank you, Karen.
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. And it's so nice to meet you guys. I hope you'll stay in touch, because I'll feel creepy just looking at your email address in my book. But I sure hope my work makes our paths cross again, because I would kill to work with any of you, to be honest.
Oh, well, when it's safe to do so, we'll all congregate at Ink Drinks again in person at some point.
Right on.
But thank you for all the people watching tonight and tuning in, going over time. I appreciate it, but we won the game, which is great.
You totally won the game. Good to
go
know.
Raps. Let's go Raps. We can do it.
Everybody's thanking y'all and saying their last few words, so I'll let it roll for a minute, but I am just going to close this up, and it was... I gave mine away. I'm an idiot.
Really? You can get these now, I think, for $10. So
here's a full circle. I gave mine to my brother.
Oh,
it's a film theme moment.
I bought my mom and dad are still on this. I bought my mom and dad. My mom became a Raptors fan in the run last year. So
how could you not?
Raps, yeah.
Like that you can't make that stuff up. That was ridiculous. It was totally fun. But now I just mostly want to get to Hamilton so I can do a social distance, the live concert release of the soundtrack.
Yes. I
hear what you're all doing next.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait to do something live with Versacello and some sort of promotion for the soundtrack and the Northern Pikes.
Don't invite me, I will kill you.
The Northern Pikes, who I'm a big fan of, we just did a cast and crew Zoom, and they're like, we should do a show when we can do shows again, and Max and Theo should come on stage, and we can do a live version of Things to Do for Money.
Oh my God, that would be incredible.
That would be kind of amazing.
I'm first in line. The family will have to pull me out of first. I am totally down for that. And maybe we could, special giveaway autographed copies of the screenplay.
Sure. Yeah.
That would be cool.
We got tons of them left.
Okay. Please don't destroy those for me, Warren, because
no problem. I got one with your name on it. Yeah. Okay.
No, we archive these things because I got to give away a Ginger Snap script to the star of Orphan Black, and they nearly passed out as their crew welcome gift because it was their favorite movie. And they thought that Bailey Downs in the show was our nodding to the movie because they didn't realize we made the movie.
Right.
So when I heard that story, this is another, new to
Tatiana. It's Tatiana, right? Yeah.
No, it was Jordan, the guy who plays Felix, her brother.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and this is another new to acting thing where he was like, isn't it? He tweeted it. That's how we found out he didn't know that we were all the same people.
It's amazing.
So
there's something called IMDb, though. I think he could have.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was awesome. So
yes,
save scripts because we'll find good homes if you can't.
For sure, and
we'll
find
get all the guys to sign, all the girls to sign. You got a Walton on that cast. I gotta meet.
There's Jennifer Walton, maybe related. You never know. Watch Rhett Morita on Age of Samurai. It's coming out on Netflix shortly, and something else. Something else is coming out, Rhett.
The Swan is a feature film, but it'll probably be out next year.
Okay.
Right on.
And to answer an old question that was in the chat, Gary and I actually did start writing the sequel to Things to Do for Money. It was called Tokyo Aria, and we were going to go to Japan this winter, shoot all the Japanese, locations, and then come back and shoot the interiors in Hamilton, obviously. But obviously that's not going to happen for a bit.
For a bit.
When we are able to make the sequel, maybe we'll just figure out how old Max and Theo are in real time, and it will just be like a 7-Up series, right? Of documentaries.
That would be incredible. And please hit me first for the crowdfunder for that.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I am in. I am your #1 fan club. Just some crazy old white lady who climbed the suburb. You can explain it when I show up, when we're
I love
allowed
it.
to do
I
that.
love it.
But I'm down. I'm investing in all of you forever from now on. So please make more stuff. All of you, individually and together. I would love to.
you so
Selfishly,
much.
I just would love to enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks so
everyone.
much for attending. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon, I hope. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good night, boys. Theo, go to bed. It's past your bedtime.
Yes, boys.
Good night, Theo.
Yeah.
See ya. Good seeing you, Rhett.
Good to see you, Warren.
Yeah,
Gary.
we'll see you on the weekend.
So nice to meet you, Rhett.
All right.
Talk soon, I hope.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.